A broken woman sat on the edge of her bedroom floor, legs folded beneath her, her silk nightgown damp from the spilled glass of water now seeping into the carpet. Her hands trembled slightly, more from the effort to remain still than from the chill in the air. She pressed her back against the cherrywood nightstand, head tilted toward the sound of footsteps pacing nearby. Her eyes, wrapped tightly in medical gauze, were hidden from view. But the expression on her face was blank, eerily calm. Desmond's voice sliced through the thick silence like glass underfoot. "For God's sake, Nadine, it's just water. You can't even handle that." He scoffed, not angrily, but with something worse disdain. "You're useless now, just dead weight. And to think I married a boss lady." The sarcasm in his voice curled like smoke. She didn't flinch. She didn't speak, just kept her breathing even, controlled, trained. She knew how to suppress herself. She had learned it long before Desmond, long before the accident. Still, the words clung to the air between them like the bitter smell of whiskey on his breath. Desmond let out a breath, sharp and exasperated. His shoes clicked against the hardwood as he left the bedroom, the door slamming shut behind him. Alone again, the silence returned. Thick and total, Nadine slowly leaned forward, fingers brushing the wet carpet, then curling into a fist. Her eyes, hidden beneath the pristine layers of bandage, blinked once, twice. Of course she had seen the glass. She had watched it tumble from the nightstand, shatter and bleed across the floor like a tiny storm. She had seen Desmond sneer, before the words even formed on his lips. Her sight was perfect. It had been since the moment she opened her eyes in the hospital. No concussion, no retinal damage, no diagnosis but whiplash, and a few minor bruises. And yet she had whispered the lie, "I can't see." Everyone had believed her. Doctors, nurses, even Desmond Especier. Desmond. He hadn't even questioned it, not once. Just stood by her bedside, his jaw tight and his concern forced, stiff, the kind of concern you rehearse, not feel. She hadn't lost her sight. No, she had simply needed to see something clearer, and now she did. Desmond's resentment had been simmering long before the crash, veiled behind goodnight, kisses and hand-holding at dinner parties. But this small, cruel performance of his had confirmed it. The accident didn't break them. It revealed them. She pulled her knees up to her chest, the cool bandages pressing against her cheeks. Silence settled again. But it wasn't empty this time. It was calculating, because if Desmond thought she was broken, if the world thought she was weak, they would all keep underestimating her. And Nadine Okoro had built empires on being underestimated. Before. The lie, Nadine Okoro's world was a sleek, glass-panelled empire built from grit, intellect, and unapologetic ambition. At 34, she was the founder and CEO of Platinum Switch, a Lagos-based fintech company renowned for its luxurious interface and seamless banking integrations tailored to Africa's elite. The tech world was notoriously male-dominated, but Nadine had carved a throne from its bones, elegant in her power, commanding in meetings, magnetic on stage. Her name was whispered in investor circles from Victoria Island to Silicon Valley. People admired her, others feared her, and for a long time, Nadine believed she was loved. She met Desmond Okoro at a networking dinner hosted by a mutual friend in Lekki. He was charming, polished, with a smooth voice and deep dimples, effortlessly weaving anecdotes that had the entire table laughing. Nadine, usually guarded, had been drawn to his warmth and easy confidence. He came from a respectable family, attended all the right schools, wore tailored suits, and spoke like a man who had been destined for success, though, at the time, he had none. He was in between jobs, freshly laid off, with 1,000 dreams and no way to fund them. She believed in him, paid his way through law school, covered his rent, even lent him seed money to open his boutique firm when no bank would give him a startup loan. She didn't keep receipts at least not back then. She loved him too much to count. In the beginning, he was grateful, loving, the kind of man who sent her flowers just because and cooked her dinner when she had back investor calls. But as the years passed and Nadine's success scaled at exponential rates, interviews, awards, billionairer, deals, something in Desmond shifted. The warmth cooled into distance. Admiration turned brittle, then suspicious. He started making comments, quiet ones, but sharp. Must be nice to have assistants do everything for you. Guess I'll just be the house husband at this point. Do you ever switch off the CEO mask at home? At first, she dismissed them. Pressure, maybe. Insecurity. The burden of being the man beside the woman who had everything. But the red flags grew bolder. He once undermined her at a dinner party, joking that she barely knew how to use the app her company created. Laughed it off as banter, even though Nadine's smile had turned to stone. She caught him once in a too-long conversation with her assistant, a marker his eyes resting where they shouldn't have. She said nothing, but Amika did. You know, Amika had said gently one evening, after a long strategy session, sometimes people love the idea of someone more than the person herself. What you can give them, what doors you open for them, ... And when that stops being enough, they look elsewhere. Nadine hadn't wanted to believe her. She still wore the memories of their early years like armor. The late-night ramen, the studying by candlelight when PHCN failed them, the way he used to hold her face like it was made of glass. But that image was cracking, and she was preparing to confront him. Then came the accident. A rainy Saturday night. Skid tires. A sharp turn. Nothing fatal, just a brief slide into a concrete barrier and a rush to the emergency room. She had felt lucky, all things considered. No internal bleeding, no major fractures. But during the neurological check, when the doctor asked if her vision was blurry, she had paused. The lie slipped out easily. I can't see. There was silence in the room. Then the gentle hum of machines, the soft touch of gauze, and the flurry of specialists being called. She sat in bed, bandaged and still, while Desmond held her hand and told her everything would be fine. But something about the way he said it, the way his voice tightened ever so slightly, the flicker of what almost looked like irritation, made her freeze inside that night. When the lights were low and the nurses had cleared out, she peeked beneath the bandages. The hospital room came into view perfectly, sterile white, the 4-drip, Desmond scrolling on his phone at the edge of the bed. Her vision was fine, but her decision was made. If he believed she was blind, helpless, vulnerable, stripped of power, then maybe he would show her who he truly was. Maybe she'd finally see it for herself. Not through the lens of nostalgia or hope, but through his behavior when he thought she no longer held the upper hand. No more wondering, no more guessing. So Nadine Okoro, tech queen, visionary, self-made, in every sense, pretended to be blind. Not because she wanted pity, but because she needed the truth. By the 3rd day of Nadine's carefully crafted lie, Desmond had already begun to shed the last remnants of the man she married. It started subtly, a shift in his rhythm. He no longer lingered in the mornings, No soft kisses on her forehead, or absent-minded questions about her day. He left the house earlier than usual, came back later, smelling faintly of cologne she didn't buy. His footsteps no longer carried warmth, only impatience. And when he spoke, it was as if she were furniture, something to move around, not speak to Dot. At first, he tried to pretend, the perfect husband in front of the nurse who came by to check her vitals, gentle with his words, his touch. But when they were alone, he changed. It was in the tone, the clipped responses, the passive sighs when she asked for water, the way he would turn up the TV volume as she tried to rest, as though her presence was a nuisance he had to tolerate. But then, he grew bold. He stopped lowering his voice on phone calls. Why should he? She was blind, powerless. Deafness wasn't part of the diagnosis. But Desmond didn't seem to realize that Nadine's hearing had sharpened, or perhaps that she was simply listening more closely than ever before. One evening, she sat quietly on the sofa, wrapped in a blanket, pretending to doze as he walked past her, phone pressed to his ear. His voice had that silky, flirtatious lilt she hadn't heard directed at her in over a year. "I miss you too, baby." "She's here, yeah, but it's like talking to a wall. Completely useless now." A pause, a soft chuckle. "She can't see a thing. You should come by. I'll figure it out." Her breath hitched in her throat, but she didn't move, didn't blink. Just let the words pierce through her, slow and deep. Desmond walked into the kitchen, still talking, still laughing. Nadine stared ahead at nothing, willing her body to stay still, to remember the plan. This wasn't just neglect, it was betrayal with a smile. A script he had probably rehearsed long before the accident ever happened. Later that night, she caught the faintest scent of jasmine, sharp and unfamiliar, on his shirt when he leaned over her to drop painkillers into her hand. There, on his white collar, was a faint smear of pink lipstick. Not hers. She didn't wear any since the hospital, hadn't even bothered with gloss. She waited until he fell asleep beside her, snoring softly, then turned her face toward the ceiling. The bandages itched, but she didn't touch them. She couldn't risk it, not yet. Her heart felt like it had splintered into tiny, sharp pieces, but she stayed calm, focused. She had survived boardroom assassinations. She would survive this. The next morning, she made the call. A marker came by under the pretense of delivering work files. They hugged briefly, tightly. Nothing was said. Nadine didn't have to explain. A marker had known, had seen the cracks. Together, they planted small cameras, discreet. Pinhole lenses tucked into shelves, behind picture frames, in the corners of the bedroom and living room. Every wire disguised, every angle calculated. If Desmond wanted to show his true colors, she would make sure the whole palette was captured, and he did. Over the next few days, Desmond stopped pretending altogether. He snapped when she asked him to read her the news, rolled his eyes when she reached for her tea and nearly spilled it. "You can't even hold a damn cup," he muttered one morning. He avoided her touch, rarely met her gaze. Not that he thought she could see it. The mask was gone. What remained was a man hollowed out by resentment and entitlement, cruel in the way only someone who had once been loved could be. Nadine said nothing. She moved slower, feigned helplessness, let him believe he was the one now holding the reins. Meanwhile, the cameras caught it all, his late-night phone calls, the laughter, the quiet threats, the way he paused in front of the hallway mirror to adjust his tie, fixing his hair like he was going to impress someone who wasn't his wife. She watched the recordings alone, late at night, earphones in, silent tears tracing her cheeks, not from heartbreak that had passed. What remained now was clarity. The illusion was gone. Nadine Okoro, once blinded by love and loyalty, now saw everything. And she wasn't going to close her eyes again. The walls of Nadine's house, once a sanctuary built with sweat and sacrifice, now echoed with the laughter of strangers, women she didn't know, footsteps that didn't belong. Desmond had begun entertaining openly in their home, striding past her with guests as if she were an afterthought, a fixture collecting dust in the corner. He made no effort to lower his voice, no pretense of respect. Her blindness had become his license to erase her. One afternoon, seated in her armchair by the bay windows, Nadine heard his voice float in from the kitchen. Low, smug, intimate. "This house, this company, it's practically mine now," he said to someone, a woman, young, giggling. "She'll sign everything soon. Power of attorney, the whole lot. What does she need it for anymore? I'm taking care of things." The words knocked the breath out of her, though her face remained motionless, her fingers gripping the armrest just slightly. Desmond was already laying claim to her empire, the company she had built from the ground up, the home she paid for in full. And now, like a slow-moving vulture, he circled over the pieces of her life, waiting for the final surrender. It wasn't long before he began pressing her to sign. It came wrapped in concern, false but polished. "You're not well, Nadine," he said one evening, sitting beside her, tone dripping with practiced patience. "You're under so much stress. You need to rest, to heal. Let me take care of everything just until you're better. I'll manage your affairs, your accounts. All you need to do is sign this." He placed the folder gently into her lap, his hand hovering near hers. She could feel him watching, assessing, calculating. Nadine reached for the pen slowly, hesitating. She traced her fingers over the paper, pretending to read the outline she couldn't see. And then, with the care of someone utterly helpless, she signed in the wrong place, purposefully. Each signature became a game, sometimes upside down, sometimes on a blank page. Desmond's frustration grew, but he masked it barely. "We'll try again tomorrow," he would mutter, jaw clenched, his patience wearing thin. Nadine would nod apologetically, eyes bandaged, hands folded. Every error bought her time. Every mistake fed his arrogance. At night, in the quiet, the silence would sometimes crack open to let the past in. Flashbacks came in sudden bursts. Desmond surprising her with lunch at her office on her birthday, helping her rehearse her TEDx talk in their kitchen, dancing barefoot in the living room. After they closed on the house, they had once dreamed together, shared visions of a legacy, of purpose, and she had loved him deeply. It was that love that made this unraveling so cruel. Betrayal was one thing. Betrayal from someone you had built your world with was something else entirely, Tonia noticed. Her younger sister had always been blunt, fiercely protective. She showed up unannounced one afternoon, clutching a small container of a goosey soup and scanning Nadine with sharp eyes. "He doesn't talk to you when I'm here," she said flatly. "And you don't talk much either. What's going on?" "I'm just tired," Nadine murmured, still adjusting. Tonia didn't buy it. Days later, after another hushed phone call and a long silence on the line, Tonia returned, eyes blazing. "Tell me the truth, Nadine. Please, I know something's wrong." So Nadine did, In her bedroom, door closed, voices low. She removed her bandages for the first time in front of her sister, blinking into the soft light. Tonia gasped, stepping back. I can see, Nadine whispered. I've always been able to, since day one. The words sat heavy in the air. Tonia listened as Nadine detailed everything: the lipstick, the perfume, the phone calls, the gaslighting, the cameras. A marker had helped her plant. I needed to know who he was when he thought I was no one. Tonia's face was a mixture of heartbreak and rage. You can't let this continue. I need time, Nadine said. Please, just trust me. Don't tell anyone. Not yet. Reluctantly, Tonia agreed, but nothing prepared Nadine for the moment. Desmond brought the other woman into their home. It was a quiet afternoon. She had just returned from her daily walk through the backyard, cane tapping gently against the tiles. Desmond assumed she was resting. She heard the door open, soft laughter, the shuffle of heels, then voices in the living room. You're so bad, the woman whispered, playful. A kiss, unmistakable. Wet, intimate, slow. The sound of fingers grazing fabric. Desmond's husky laugh. I told you, she can't see a thing. She's basically furniture now. Nadine sat motionless in her darkened bedroom, the door slightly ajar, her body frozen, her face blank. But inside, something broke wide open. Not anger, not yet, just sorrow, raw and complete. A mourning for the man she once loved, for the future they had painted together. She had carried this marriage like a crown, proud and weighty. Now it felt like chains. She didn't cry loudly. There were no gasps, no dramatics, just a slow, silent collapse inward. Her body curled into itself on the edge of the bed, fists balled, a quiet tremble in her shoulders. A woman grieving the death of a love that had, in truth, already died long ago. Her breathing grew shallow as she stared into the darkness behind her bandages, her heart hollow but determined. She wasn't broken, not yet, not ever, but she had seen enough. And now the reckoning would begin. It happened on a stormy Thursday evening, the kind that wrapped Lagos in thick air and flickering lights. Desmond returned home earlier than usual, his mood tense, eyes sharp. Nadine sat in the living room, swathed in silk, her head bowed slightly under her bandages. He didn't bother with pleasantries. Instead, he strode toward her with a leather folder tucked under his arm, his voice carefully measured. I spoke with the board's legal rep. They're okay with the share transfer, given the situation. I've had everything prepared. It's just paperwork now. I need your signature tonight, Nadine. She didn't answer, just sat still, the way he had come to expect. He placed the folder on the coffee table, opened it, slid the pen into her fingers like he was guiding a puppet. Then he crouched in front of her, all false tenderness and strained patience. I know you're tired, baby. I'll take care of things for you, like always. She held the pen delicately, fingers tracing the cool metal. Then, without warning, she turned her head and looked him dead in the eyes. No bandages, no hesitation, just razor-sharp clarity. Are you sure? She said calmly. You want me to sign this? Desmond froze. The blood drained from his face so fast it was as if his very soul had fled his body. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He blinked, searching for the bandages that were no longer there, for the blindness that had never existed. You, he whispered, stumbling back. You can see. Nadine stood slowly, her expression unreadable. I never stopped seeing. I just stopped pretending not to. She walked to the cabinet by the bookshelf, pulled out a slim tablet, and tapped the screen. Within seconds, a video began to play. Grainy footage, time-stamped, unmistakable. Desmond's voice filled the room. She's completely blind now. All that power, gone. Now she knows who's really in charge. Another clip, him kissing the intern in their living room. Another mocking Nadine's intelligence during a phone call. Another discussing how soon he could have her assets signed over before she completely falls apart. Each scene, cut deeper than the last, not just in betrayal, but in clarity. He hadn't merely fallen out of love, he had planned her downfall. Desmond staggered back, the weight of the recordings crushing what was left of his composure. Nadine, wait. No, she said, voice like steel. You wait. You thought I was blind, Desmond, but you were the one who couldn't see. Not just me, but what loyalty means, what partnership is. You resented my strength, so you tried to make me small. You thought if I couldn't lead, I'd follow. But I don't follow men like you. She picked up her phone and dialed. 1 ring, 2. Then, it's time, escort him out. Seconds later, 2 members of her private security detail entered. Desmond flinched, stammering, but there was nowhere to run. He tried to argue, to plead, but Nadine's face was carved from stone. Take him out of my house, permanently. They obeyed, firm but respectful, guiding Desmond toward the door. He shouted over his shoulder as they pulled him away, desperate now. You can't do this. This is my home too. Nadine didn't flinch. Not anymore. The door shut behind him with a final, echoing thud. Within 48 hours, the rest followed like clockwork. Her legal team filed for divorce and formally initiated fraught investigations, attaching documented evidence of coercion and attempted financial abuse. The board at Platinum Switch was informed, and statements were made, clean, professional, but damning. Nadine's reputation remained untouched. If anything, it strengthened. She had not been a victim, she had been a strategist, one who chose the long game and won. As for the intern, Desmond's side project, Nadine made one quiet call to her firm's senior partners. The girl was removed from the program before lunchtime. It wasn't revenge. It was house cleaning. A woman who helped dismantle another's life didn't deserve to practice law. Not under Nadine's watch. And just like that, the performance ended. No more bandages, no more feigned frailty. Nadine reclaimed her space. Each step through the house was now deliberate, powerful. She moved with grace, not apology. She opened the curtains, let the light in, replaced the photos Desmond had once removed from the shelves. The scent of her favorite vanilla diffuser returned to the hallway. The ghost of her old self, the cautious, generous woman who waited too long for her husband to love her honestly, was buried for good. She stood at her office balcony days later, phone in one hand, coffee in the other, Amica beside her. Lagos pulsed below, busy, brilliant, alive. You ready? Amica asked quietly. Nadine smiled. I was born ready. I just needed to open my eyes. In the weeks that followed Desmond's removal from her life, Nadine lived in a kind of curated silence, not a void, not an emptiness, but a sacred quiet. No more lies humming beneath conversations. No more pretending. Her home felt larger, lighter. She moved through it without shrinking. There were no calls to return, no footsteps to anticipate. just the steady rhythm of a woman rebuilding herself, brick by unshakable brick. Desmond, of course, couldn't stay gone for long. A snake doesn't give up its prey easily. He slithered back through social media, liking old photos, sending cryptic messages through mutual friends, even attempting to reach Amica with apologies. Nadine didn't respond. She blocked him everywhere, shut every door, burned every bridge. She owed him no explanation, no conversation, not even contempt. Silence was her final word. The public found out before long. An anonymous leak, strategic and quiet, revealed the scandal to the press. The story exploded in certain corners of the internet. CEO wife outsmarts cheating husband with fake blindness. Memes were made. TikToks reenacted key moments. Speculation ran wild. Nadine never confirmed the details, but she never denied them either. Her dignity remained intact while Desmond's name was dragged through the digital mud. Amica, ever loyal, handled the PR spin with surgical grace, painting Nadine not as a victim, but as a woman who refused to lose herself in someone else's darkness. Weeks later, Nadine stood beneath the bright lights of a Women in Tech conference, her heels clicking softly against the stage floor as she approached the podium. She had been invited to speak on leadership, resilience, and reclaiming space. Her talk was elegant, careful, no names, no scandals, just truth. She recounted how power, when misunderstood, can become isolation, how many women quietly fold parts of themselves to fit into roles they've outgrown. And then she said it. Power, she told the room, is not what you hold in your hand. It's what you refuse to hand over when someone thinks you're weak. The room erupted. The clip was posted online and went viral within hours. It wasn't just a quote, it was a declaration. Women reposted it with tears in their eyes, with fists raised, with their own stories quietly tucked behind the caption. Inspired by the overwhelming response, Nadine launched a foundation 2 months later, the Seeing Room. Its mission was simple: to support professional women in emotionally abusive or toxic relationships, especially those afraid to speak because of status, wealth, or shame. Counseling, legal aid, safe spaces, all handled with care and confidentiality. She poured her own funds into the project, partnered with therapists, survivors, and women-led law firms. It was no longer enough for her to survive. She wanted to make survival louder, safer, possible for others. In therapy, Nadine peeled back the deeper layers. She finally faced the truth she had long buried, that her fear of being too much, too powerful, too successful, had made her make herself smaller, that some part of her still believed she had to earn love by downplaying her light. Desmond hadn't just exploited her trust, he'd mirrored the quiet doubt she held about her own right to take up space. Therapy didn't make her perfect, but it made her honest. She learned to be proud of her ambition without apology, to wear her elegance without the need to soften it, to demand loyalty, not beg for love, to trust that someone could hold her power and not be threatened by it. And most of all, she forgave herself, not for loving Desmond, but for staying too long in a love that no longer honored her. By the end of the year, Nadine Okoro was not a woman seeking revenge or pity. She was something rarer, a woman who had seen herself clearly in the mirror, in the wreckage, in the silence, and chosen to rise anyway, not with rage, not with tears, but with grace, precision, and fire, unbent, unbitter, unapologetically whole. The mirror was tall, framed, in gold, and unforgivingly honest. Nadine stood before it, unbandaged, unhidden, and whole. Her simple black dress clung to her with the quiet elegance she'd always carried. But now, there was something new in her reflection. Not just beauty, not just success, but peace. A hard-earned, deeply rooted stillness that came from walking through fire and emerging without ashes. The noise of the world faded behind the dressing room door as she adjusted a single earring and took one last breath before stepping out. The platinum switch 10-year anniversary gala shimmered with light, clinking glasses, and soft jazz. Guests murmured with admiration as she entered alone, every inch of her poised, radiant, and unshaken. Some glanced around, half expecting a man by her side. But she moved through the crowd with a different kind of companionship, one born of self-respect and silent triumph. She didn't need a hand to hold. Her own spine was enough. Amika found her by the champagne table, eyes glistening. She pulled Nadine into a warm hug, tight and real, the kind that says asterisk, I saw what it cost. You to become this woman. Asterisk, you did it. Amaka whispered against her shoulder. You really saw it through. Nadine smiled, letting the words settle, letting the truth of them breathe. As she stood beneath the crystal chandelier, her gaze swept the room, not for validation, not for approval, but to remind herself. I belong here. In her mind, her voice rose soft but certain. Asterisk, sometimes it takes going blind to finally see the truth, and when you do, ... you never unsee it again. Asterisk, later, as the night wound down, Nadine returned to the powder room for a moment of stillness. She faced the mirror once more, met her own eyes, and smiled, not the rehearsed smile of public events, but the quiet one of a woman who had lost and found herself in the same breath. Not just a CEO, not just a survivor, but a woman reborn in clarity and finally fully seen.